So the priority setting partnership was a 2-year project designed to understand what the priorities of people who themselves were living with and beyond cancer were in terms of research. And there were a couple of surveys that were designed that were sent out. And then there were a number of meetings where patients as well as clinicians and researchers got together and looked at the results of those surveys to try to identify the themes that were coming out. At the end of the process, there was a full day workshop, which was a really amazing mixture of patients, charities, researchers, doctors, nurses, psychologists, who all came together and looked at top themes that had come out. And then from that, we had a top 10. And those top 10 were really used to highlight where we feel the gaps are in terms of living with and beyond cancer research. So it was a very detailed, a really long process, but a very important one because it really took into account the interests and the things that were important to people who themselves are living with and beyond cancer, not just what researchers or doctors think are important, because those two things can actually be quite different. I think that research into living with and beyond cancer is really important because there's previously been a real emphasis on how we treat cancer, how we can increase survival, but nobody till relatively recently looked at what was happening to people who were living with treatment or living with cancer and on treatment long term, or people that had survived cancer and were living with the consequences of treatment. And what we know now is that from the millions of people now that are living with and beyond cancer is that that's not necessarily an easy place to be. I think if you are lucky enough to survive cancer after treatment, many people are left with quite often severe and difficult side effects, late effects which emerge later on. And we don't really know enough about what those are, why they emerge, and how they can be managed. And so this research is really important because we need to know more about what we can do to prevent those impacts, but also how we can manage them and how we can enable people to live well afterwards.